I've been to more funerals than I can count anymore. I stopped counting somewhere around the time I buried my third close friend in a single year. My parents went first. That's the natural order. You accept it, even when it destroys you. Then my siblings, one by one, like candles being blown out in a quiet room. Then friends I had known since I was young enough to believe life would never end. And then the one person I never once imagined facing this world without. I am still here. After all of it, I am still here. And some mornings when the house is so quiet, you can hear your own heartbeat. I sit by the window and I ask myself, why me? Why am I the last one standing? My name is Raymond Sinclair, and I live alone now on the same farmhouse where I have lived for most of my life. The same creaking floors, the same low ceilings that hold decades of memory, like a jar holds old photographs. The same fields stretching out beyond the back porch, fields that used to feel full of life, full of noise, full of people I loved. Now they just stretch, wide and quiet and endless, like the days themselves. The farmhouse sits at the end of a long dirt road, about 4 miles outside of a town small enough that everybody once knew your name. I say once because most of the people who knew mine are gone now. The ones who remain are kind enough. They wave from their trucks when they pass. They drop food off around the holidays with that careful, gentle look in their eyes. That look people give you when they don't quite know what to say, but they feel they should say something. I appreciate it, I do. But kindness from strangers, no matter how sincere, cannot fill the specific shape of the people you have lost. I wake up every morning around 5, not because an alarm tells me to. My body simply refuses to sleep past the hour it spent a lifetime rising for work. I dress slowly now. Everything is slow now. And I make my way to the kitchen where the old wood stove still ticks and groans as it warms. I put the kettle on. I stand at the window above the sink and I look out at the fields as the pale gray light of early morning begins to bleed through the dark. And every single morning, without fail, the grief finds me there. Not in a dramatic way, not the way it used to. Not that early, breathless, chest-crushing grief that nearly killed me in the first years after I lost her. No, this grief is quieter now. It has learned my routines. It knows exactly where to find me. It sits beside me at that window like an old companion I never asked for and never learned how to send away. I am old. Far older than I ever truly believed I would live to be. And I have carried things in this life that no person should have to carry alone. But here I am, still standing, still breathing, still watching the morning light come slow across those empty fields. And some days, that feels like a miracle. And some days, it feels like the loneliest thing in the world. I don't talk much anymore. Not because I have nothing to say. Lord knows after this many years a man accumulates more words than he could ever speak. But because there is no one left here to say them to. The farmhouse that once rang with voices, with laughter, with arguments and meals and the beautiful ordinary noise of a life being lived, is silent now. A silence so deep and so permanent that sometimes it stops feeling like absence and starts feeling like presence. like the quiet itself has moved in and made itself at home in every corner of every room. There are days I walk through this house and I can still feel them. I pass the doorway of what used to be the children's room, and I swear I can still hear the sound of small feet on the floorboards. I walk past the chair by the fireplace, her chair, and my hand reaches out sometimes, just slightly, just barely, like some old buried part of me still expects to feel her there. I catch myself doing it, and then I stop. And I stand there in the middle of the room with my hand half raised and my heart somewhere down around my knees. And the silence just watches me. Her name was Margaret, my wife, my Margaret. We were married for 53 years, and I want you to understand what that means. Not just the number, not just the decades, but what it truly means to spend 53 years building a life beside another person, to share every ordinary Tuesday, every disagreement that felt enormous at the time and means nothing now, every quiet evening on the back porch watching the sun go down over the fields. After 53 years, a person doesn't just live in your house, they live inside you. They become so woven into the fabric of who you are that when they go, you don't just lose them. You lose entire parts of yourself you didn't even know they were holding. She got sick in the winter. It came on slowly at first, the way the worst things always do, quietly, without announcement, giving you just enough hope to make the eventual truth that much harder to survive. I sat beside her bed every single day. I held her hand. I talked to her even on the days she couldn't answer. I told her about the fields. I told her about the birds I'd seen that morning from the kitchen window. I told her things I should have said 30 years earlier, when pride and stubbornness and the foolish arrogance of a man who thinks he has endless time kept the words locked somewhere behind my ribs. I told her I was sorry. For every moment I was too busy. For every evening I chose work over sitting beside her. For every time she needed me to be soft and I was hard instead. I told her all of it. And she looked at me with those tired, patient eyes of hers, eyes that had forgiven me 1,000 times before I ever thought to ask. And she squeezed my hand. That was the last real thing she ever said to me. Not words, just that squeeze, just the warmth of her fingers around mine. And then one morning in February, when the fields were white with frost, and the farmhouse was so cold you could see your breath in the bedroom, she was gone. I sat beside her for a long time before I called anyone. I just sat there holding her hand, still warm, still her, not ready to let the world come in and make it real. Outside the window, the fields stretched on exactly as they always had. The sun came up exactly as it always had. And I remember thinking, with a grief so total it had no name, how dare the world just continue? How dare it? Because mine had just stopped completely. They say time heals. People told me that in the weeks after Margaret passed. Well-meaning people, kind people, people who stood in my kitchen with casserole dishes and sad eyes and didn't know what else to offer. They said it the way people say things when the truth is too heavy and silence feels too cruel. Time heals, Raymond. It gets easier. You'll find your footing again. I didn't have the heart to tell them what I already knew. Some losses don't heal. Some losses simply become part of your architecture. They don't go away. They just become the new shape of you. the new floor plan of every room inside your chest. And you learn, slowly and painfully, and without any choice in the matter, how to live inside a version of yourself that will never quite feel whole again. The first year after she died was the hardest year of my life. And I say that as a man who has known hard years. I grew up without much. I worked land that didn't always give back what you put into it. I buried my parents. I buried my brother Thomas, my big brother Thomas, who taught me how to drive a tractor and how to throw a punch and how to stand up straight when life tried to fold you in half. I buried friends I had known since childhood. I had known grief before Margaret. I thought I understood it. I did not understand it. After she was gone, the farmhouse became almost unbearable. Every object in it was a wound. Her reading glasses on the nightstand, the indent still left in her pillow, the handwriting on the grocery list still stuck to the refrigerator door, her handwriting, those careful looping letters, listing things she would never buy, and meals she would never cook, and a life she would never finish living. I couldn't throw it away. I couldn't move it. I just looked at it every single day and let it break me a little more each time, until breaking started to feel like breathing, just something my body did to survive. I stopped eating properly, stopped tending the fields with any real care. I would sit in her chair by the fireplace for hours, not reading, not thinking clearly, not doing anything at all, just sitting inside the grief, like a man sitting at the bottom of a very deep well, looking up at a circle of light so far above him he couldn't imagine ever climbing back to it. My daughter Eleanor drove out from the city twice that first month. She would stand in the doorway of whatever room I was in and look at me with eyes so full of worry and love and helplessness that I had to look away, because seeing her pain on top of my own was more than I knew how to hold. She would cook, she would clean, she would sit beside me in the evenings, and sometimes she would take my hand the way her mother used to, and we would just sit there together in the quiet, two people missing the same woman in two completely different ways. The second time she came, she brought my grandson Daniel with her. He was 7 years old, small and bright-eyed and completely unaware of the full weight of what had happened, the way only a child can be. He ran through the front door and straight into my legs and wrapped his arms around my knees and looked up at me with those enormous, serious eyes and said, "Grandpa, are you sad?" And something in me just cracked open, not in a bad way, in the way a frozen river cracks open in early spring, loud and sudden and a little terrifying. But underneath the break, underneath all that cold, hard ice, the water was still moving. It had been moving the whole time, quietly, stubbornly, refusing to stop even when everything above it had gone completely still. I got down on my knees right there in the doorway of that old farmhouse, these old knees on these old floorboards, and I pulled that boy into my arms and I held him the way a drowning man holds onto something solid, and I cried. I cried in a way I hadn't let myself cry since the morning Margaret left. Great, heaving, ugly, honest tears that I had been swallowing for months because I thought that was what strength looked like. It wasn't strength. It was just another way of being alone. Daniel patted my back with his small hand, slowly, gently, the way you comfort someone when you're 7 years old and you don't have the words, but you have the instinct. And he said, very quietly, right against my ear, I still love you, Grandpa. I'm still here. I still love you. I'm still here. I don't know if a child can understand what those words meant to a broken old man kneeling on a cold farmhouse floor. I don't know if Daniel will ever fully understand what he gave me in that moment. But those 6 words reached down into the darkest part of me and found something I was genuinely afraid had died along with Margaret. The will to still be here. The faint, fragile, stubborn desire to stand back up. I stood back up. Not that day, not even that week. Rising from that kind of darkness is never a single moment. It is 1,000 small, exhausting, unglamorous choices strung together over months. Forcing yourself to eat. Making yourself walk to the back porch, even when the sight of those empty fields splits you open all over again. Choosing, painfully, deliberately, to still be present in a life that no longer looks anything like the one you built and loved. But I stood back up because of Daniel, because of Eleanor, because somewhere beneath all that grief, there was still a man with quiet, unspoken promises to keep to the people who still needed him. I started tending the fields again that spring. Slowly at first, just walking them, just putting my hands in the soil the way my father taught me. There is something about the earth that does not lie to you. It simply asks you to show up, to trust that something will grow even in the ground that has known the hardest winters. I found that deeply comforting. I started talking to Margaret too. Every evening on the back porch, her chair always beside mine, I would tell her about the fields, about Daniel's latest mischief, about the bird that kept returning to the old oak tree by the fence. I told her I missed her every single evening, without exception. I never stopped. I never will. But somewhere in those quiet conversations, something shifted inside me. I began to understand that grief and gratitude are not opposites, that you can miss someone with every cell in your body and still find it in yourself to be grateful. Grateful that they existed. Grateful that out of every life being lived on this earth, yours and theirs somehow found each other. They are all gone now, every last one of them. But here is what I know. What I know now in my bones, in a way I never could have understood when I was young and certain that time was endless. They never really left. The love stays. It lives inside you like a second heartbeat. Quiet, constant, faithful. Margaret is in the way I still reach for 2 cups every morning. Thomas is in the way I still laugh too loud at my own jokes. My mother is in every meal I make from memory because she taught my hands what her hands knew. They are all still here, woven into me completely. So if this old man's words meant anything to you, do one thing. Don't wait until the chair beside you is empty to truly see the person sitting in it. Say the thing you've been too proud to say. Love without saving any for later. Because later is a promise life never actually made you. I learned that the hard way. Leave a comment below and tell me, what is the one thing in your life right now that you know you're not appreciating enough? I read every single one. And on the quiet evenings when this farmhouse feels too still, your words make it feel like someone is sitting in the chair beside me again.